All right, real excited to have the next gentleman on the Sports Card Shop guest line for his somehow is only his first time, but better late than never, as they say. Now back at Panini, Mr. Tracy Hackler, welcome.
John, thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited. That intro got me pumped and made me feel like I've missed out by not being on your show before. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's sort of new, so if you would have been on it like in the back of the day, you wouldn't have got to see it. I'll say that much. But I appreciate you making some time. I know you're very busy. Kind of go back. You've been in the hobby a long time. Wore many hats. I can make an argument. You're probably one of the most experienced guys in this hobby that we all love. You left Panini a few years back to join Jimmy, Mahan in the Road Show. Obviously, that's a reason enough. Jimmy, as you can attest to, is a great guy, smart, compassionate. How tough of a decision? You were at Panini a while when you made that decision to leave at that time. How tough of a decision was it at that time?
It was really difficult. Probably the toughest professional decision I ever made. And because I love Panini, I'd been there for 11 years. Had been sharing an office with one of my best friends, doing really fun and effective, productive work for Panini and for the trading card industry at large as a result. And um, I tell everybody I could have done it for 11 more years and 11 more years after that. But Jimmy, like you said, he's a really unique dude. And I, I had the chance to get to know him a little bit through the industry prior to 2 years ago. And when he talks, you listen. And I listened, and I loved him really more than anything else. I loved his vision for the Roadshow franchise. Um, Loved his shop in Kentucky, and loved what he stands for as a first and foremost as a human being, and then as a hobby um, advocate, so to speak. And so although it was a lot of long nights of contemplating and thinking and talking to my family and my friends, and it turned out to be a pretty easy decision. I mean, it was something I wanted to do. I felt really right about making the move, and quite frankly, had planned to be there for a lot longer than I was. I think we did a bunch of really good things in a short amount of time to put Roadshow on the map, and I'm proud of the work we did there. But more importantly, I'm proud of the relationships I developed there. And um, Jimmy, first and foremost, is just a fellow Christian man, and his heart is bigger than the whole state of Kentucky. And so love him, and Dubs and all the other guys I got to work. I mean, I could list them all. In fact, Trey, Cody, Kevin, the Channels brothers, Jimmy Gale, Will Barton. I mean, Brian Fillmore, Jimbo. I mean, the Wampa. The list goes on. It was a small company, so I got to really know everyone there and uh, feel like they're family. And but when the opportunity, this newest opportunity with Panini came up, um, I I I listened. I've I've always said listen to every opportunity that comes your way because you just never know. Not that you're unhappy or disenchanted with where you're at, but you owe it to yourself and your family and people you love to listen when opportunities arise. And this opportunity with Panini came through a dear friend of mine for many decades, Jim Stefano, and he said, "We have a need for you in product development. Would you come do it?" And I gave it some thought, and that was another really tough decision for me. But I came back and left a company that felt more like family than it did a profession, and re-entered a company that absolutely feels like a family. So I'm excited.
Kudos for naming all those folks at Roadshow. You got a better memory. I would have trouble doing that, but that I think that's a testament to you and your professionalism and your how you care about people. Um, coming back, and here's the other thing: those friendships still exist. So what whatever hat you're wearing, those relationships don't go by the wayside. It just might be
Mm-mm.
a different form. What was that like? You're on the corporate side at a card manufacturer. As a working at Panini, you deal with LCSs and obviously a very important part, kind of one of the lifebloods of existing, and then you're part of one or part of a chain. What was that like going from one aspect to the other? Can you speak to that?
Uh, it was really, really different. The first thing you realize when you go to work for a small startup is uh, the marketing budget isn't quite what it was when you're at Panini. So you got to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more.
I will say this, not to cut you off. The setup you had at last year's national was probably, I don't know about budgets, but it was one of the best ones there. I mean, with the I don't the steel rig, and I thought I was at a wrestling arena, but very cool. But I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, no, no.
I was just
No, that's one
but
of
go
the things
ahead.
that Jimmy told me early on, right when I started. He gave me kind of a short list of things that were really important to him, and having a booth in the corporate area at the National was very important to him. And I've been on the Panini side and the Dharma side of shows for many, many years, and so I knew how difficult that was going to be to pull off. And I think it's a testament to a lot of key relationships I've developed over the years of people that are friends and not just work colleagues, but they're friends. And um, I kind of leaned into some of those to be heard and try to get Roadshow a spot in the corporate area, and then leaned into some friends I made here at Panini. Kusi Schuster is the guy who kind of built the booth that Jimmy had envisioned. And um, again, it's all really everything that I accomplished at Roadshow is a result of relationships I'd fostered and developed and nurtured over the years. And I think that's how I've tried to live my life, not just my career professionally, but just in everyday life, is just build meaningful relationships that you can lean on, and they can lean on you for forever, no matter what field you're in, what place you work at. It's more about the relationships.
And now, coming back to Panini from that side, it kind of gives you, in my opinion anyway, a unique perspective, right? Because now, when you in your first foray at Panini, right, you probably have. I was a former store owner. People complaining, whether it be about allocate, people complain. I think that's the moral of the story. But now you get sort of a perspective from that side. Do you think that experience, you're very experienced in general, but you think that experience at the LCS level is something that in your return here to Panini can actually aid you in what you do there again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's huge. I think that the LCS side of it is one side I hadn't worked in. I worked on the manufacturer side, on the publication side. I'd never worked on the LCS side, and so um, you kind of know, or you think you know what goes on at an LCS, but you don't really know it and feel it and sense it until you're at an LCS. And you hear people talk about allocations, you hear people complain about margins, and when you're running a business that relies solely on allocation and margins, or not solely, but largely on allocation and margins, you feel the pain now. And it is an eye-opening perspective to have. And it's kind of the same emotion or the sense I had when I was at Beckett early in my career and worked there for 5 years, and then went to Donruss. And then that gave me a whole new appreciation for what card manufacturers go through, and how really every single product that gets out the door is a minor miracle, knowing how many steps and hurdles and levels of approvals are involved. It gives you a keen appreciation for what folks in that side, on the manufacturer side, on the LCS side, go through. And I think there'll probably be a similar understanding for people who are on the outside who would come to work for a manufacturer and see that, oh, okay, it's not that easy always, or there are all these other preventative measures sometimes that keep you from doing maybe something that somebody on the outside thinks is a no-brainer. Why don't you do this card, or why don't you do this? It's like, well, can't really do that. The leagues won't let us. We can't get that approved or whatever the reason is. But um, I think it would be in a pipe dream kind of scenario, having a class where kind of like a real graduate level class for all the hobbyists to spend time at a manufacturer, spend time at an LCS, spend time with the leagues, and to give more of a universal understanding of everything that goes on to make the industry click every day.
Well, I think you just came up with an idea to do a master class. And now that you wore those hats, right? Who better to do it? And now, listen, if anyone complains from a store level to you, you can actually say, "Hey, I know how you feel." And, before if you said that, they'd say, "No, you don't."
Yeah,
Now you can say, yes, I do," and they can't argue with that. Well, what do you think? Wearing kind of the LCS hat, where being in with a manufacturer, what do you think's the one of the bigger things you have to deal with, kind of on both sides?
I think really, I mean, the thing that impacts all sides is that just the current market conditions and how quickly they can change. And I think if you, because I've been in the industry, I've been blessed to be in this industry for 28 years. You've seen the roller coaster ride, and the last 4 or 5 years have been incredibly unprecedented in the best possible ways. But I've also seen it when it's really low. You've seen it, John, when it's really low, and it's not always. We know it's not always up so high, and so I think the market conditions and understanding um, that they can shift without warning on a day's notice or a week's notice. I think just trying to be as prepared as possible before the market shifts, for the market shift, and I think when things are going crazy, sky high values and d- doubling or tripling or quadrupling your money every day, some people lose sight of the fact that it's not always going to be like this, nor is it supposed to be like that. If it was, we wouldn't be around long. So I think, but that's one thing. The market conditions impacts everything. Uh, the manufacturer side, the LCS side, the leagues side. I mean, and so I think knowing those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it, right? Isn't that what they say? And so I think um, just knowing that it's not always so many new people came in when the thing was skyrocketing during the pandemic and after. And I think a lot of those people may have lacked some perspective on where we've been before and where we can go again if we're not careful. So I think just doing everything we can, all of us, in our own ways, in our own silos, uh, and then collectively to prepare for those market shifts, up or down.
Yeah, and great commentary there. It's true. I've been, doing in the hobby since 1979. There's been peaks and valleys all through the years, and I don't think anybody, I don't care when you got in the hobby or how long, really saw what was going to happen during the pandemic. And anyone that says that is probably not being, truly genuine. I was shocked. I think a lot of people were shocked, but during that, even on this very show, Tracy, I was, it's great. Enjoy it. There's nothing, you didn't, no one's doing anything wrong, as long as you do everything above board in the right way. But, this isn't going, like you said, this isn't going to be the case forever. Like this is going, it's going to calm down. To what level remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And even that's not a bad thing, right? Because there's now cards at the crescendo phase, right, that I couldn't obtain. I'm sure others the same boat, right? And now we've seen sort of a settling down where some of that stuff now back in the budget. So there's positives and negatives to every scenario. It's what you really, like you kind of said, what you choose to see and kind of focus on. So but then I'm sure you hear it too, that the hobby is going to die, or no, it's just going to be different levels to it. The hobby's been around for 100 years almost, and it's going to be here when and hopefully later than sooner when we're not, and still going. And so, and whenever I hear that, I always kind of chuckle and just it's the the doomsday, the sky is falling kind of folks that like to whether you want to call it clickbait or attention, but the hobby settled down, but it's still thriving. There's still tons of transactions. We still see new businesses forming, new stores popping up. I venture to say, and I'll get your opinion on this. You know, I, I had a store from 1992 to 97. Uh, I think I've never seen as many stores, in my opinion. I don't have a number, but it seems like we have more stores now than ever before. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think maybe back in the, I don't know, late '80s, early '90s, there may have been more hobby shops, but your point's a good one in that the number of new hobby shops over the last 5 years is that type of growth probably rivals what happened in that real big boom of the early '90s when everybody was jumping in from an LCS perspective, a manufacturer perspective, and um, I think, but I think it's I think the shops today it's so different, and maybe the reason that the numbers haven't might not be as big as they were is because online sales are such a big thing now, and they weren't back then. But I think the the hobby shop, in my opinion, has always been the place to go. It's you mentioned the word, and I've used this word too, the lifeblood of the industry. That's where I learned about cards and where my card dealer Ken Green at Bunt Punt and Dunk Sports Cards in Louisville taught me things about players and about how to collect and what to collect. And um, I think that still goes on in the best shops. They're inviting, welcoming places for people to come and hang out and just soak stuff up. And that's one of the things I love about the roadshow model was that all four of their shops are uniquely geographically different, but the key the key mantra is the same. Is like come in and learn from us and just hang out. If you don't buy anything at all, but you come and have a good time and hang out with us, learn about cards, teach us about cards too. That and I see that going on in Kentucky. I see it going on in New York and California and Texas, and it's just and the best shops around the country are like that. And I think they'll and like you said, the hobby's not going anywhere. I mean, if I could count the number of times I heard the hobby was dying over the last 3 decades, I mean, it would have had more lives than a cat. And it's, but it's not going to die. Like you said, it's been around since the late 1800s, and it, it'll live beyond all of us and keep thriving. I just think market conditions are up and down, just like anything else. And as long as you're prepared for that and weather for that as much as you can, I think you can make this industry anything you want to.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. You touched on, with the road shows, for stores. We've seen other stores kind of start to franchise, even along the same lines. It's difficult, to operate any business as a former LCS owner. It's not as simple as just turning the sign to open and people just going to walk in naturally. You got to put in some work and effort. You got to be smart and strategic. It's hard to operate one store. Talk about the degree of difficulty to franchise a store, especially when it's multi-state. It's one thing to be in the same state, maybe in different cities, but now you're going all across the nation. Coast to coast. Talk about the difficulty. Obviously the degree of difficulty is going to go up when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that attracted me to the roadshow initially. Aside from Jim and the other great people there, was the fact that it was a true kind of coast to coast franchise shop, and each of the shops is different, but it's all roadshow. There's Kentucky Roadshow, Texas Roadshow, New York Roadshow, California Roadshow, which just opened a few weeks ago. And to speak to your level of degree of difficulty in running a model like this, California was supposed to open last July, but permit snags in California, uh, construction came to a complete halt in the shop, and so it was about a year late, almost a year later than it should have been, and that's another year where you're not making revenue in that store, and so you've got to have you got to have pretty thick skin, and you got to have a an appetite for some uneasy days and months when things don't go the way you thought they were going to. And I think Jimmy's perfect for that. He's very calm. One of the things he used to say was panic slowly because we had a bunch of younger folks who run the shops in Texas, New York, and now California, and they're just ready to go. And man, we got to be open. We got to be open. We got to sell this, sell that. And Jimmy and older guys like me in the company would say, just it's all good, just relax. So he would always say panic slowly. But I think um, you can't have eyes in all four places, right? So Jimmy has to kind of deputize or trust the people he's hired to run the shops, whether it's Cody and Chase in Austin and Texas, and Kevin and Lewis in New York, or Ryan and Justin and Mike in California. Yes, Jimmy and David Diamondstein will come down and help start up each shop. The 2 weeks prior, the 2 weeks after, Jimmy and David are on site in the locations, watching things, helping things run smoothly. But then when they leave and go back to Lexington, um, the shop managers are on their own. Like, let's go. And like you said, um, it's it's not just build it and they will come. When you turn the lights on and say on, people don't just automatically come in. There's a lot of education that goes on in your communities and the neighborhoods, um, and you have to be patient because there could be days that you see 3 people, and there could be days that you see 30 people. Um, so I think that's another challenge is just the inconsistency with the startup of getting foot traffic consistently and acquiring qualified customers because um, you get people in the shop and they may not always buy, and that's okay. But you just, as long as they keep coming back, and word of mouth is huge, and it's a lot of challenges. But I think all the shop guys will tell you, once in any shop around the country, will tell you that once you open up and you're able to kind of start seeing your vision uh, materialize when moms and dads and daughters and sons are coming in the shop and they're spending time talking to you or digging through your bargain boxes or looking through your singles. Man, it makes all the difference in the world and keeps you motivated to keep trying to take it up another level.
To someone that's maybe thinking about opening an LCS now, they haven't opened yet. Do you think it's more difficult now that things have sort of settled down, or not necessarily?
That's a good question because I think if you started a shop in the height of the craziness and you don't have um, you're not committed to it long term, it could not be a you might not have the patience to do it the right way. If you're expecting uh, double, triple, quadruple your returns in year one, it's probably not going to happen unless you're just in a crazy area or you lightning strikes, you catch lightning in a bottle or something. But I would never discourage someone from opening a hobby shop will that will keep the education going, keep the fun, the excitement of this great hobby we've had for forever. Um, to kind of build that community in your area, wherever you are. If you're contemplating opening a shop, I think I would never discourage you from following your dream if that's what you want to do, and to build uh, the next generation of collectors who will build the next ones after that.
Yeah, and I think we both agree. LCS is like you said, I've said it's the kind of the one of the lifelines, lifebloods of this hobby, and especially if you're in an area where there's a void of those, it's a great opportunity to
Exactly
bring the
right.
hobby to that area, right? So you always get, well, any business, right? If you're going to open it, you want to know what's around that's of similar ilk and that sort of thing, and be smart about it. So, but like you said, well said, right? If someone's, that's their dream, if that's their passion, who are we or anybody to say not to do something?
For
Just
sure.
be intelligent and smart about it, and get it done, right? So that's what it's about.
Yes.
Um, one of the things we've seen, unfortunately, a lot of great things during the pandemic, not the pandemic itself, but in the hobby, customer service kind of took a hit. Not just in the hobby, that's across the board in every industry. So it's not hobby exclusive. Recently stuff's come out, and every company has some warts here and there. There's a logo man thing with Panini, but we've seen even other companies. I mean, what can you say to that? And some of this stuff happened also, while you weren't there, but now you're back. Like, how do what goes on behind the scenes that you can say, obviously, to combat the thing, to maybe ensure, that's this stuff don't make future headlines and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think customer service in any company uh, in the hobby is a I don't want to call it a thankless job, but it seems like it is more than it's not. And I don't know. I can't speak specifically to the one example you mentioned, but I do know that I think there could be a misconception that customer service folks in this industry don't care or aren't knowledgeable or intelligent about the products or the industry. And I can just speak for the Panini side is that they have a whole team dedicated to customer service, dedicated to replacements and damages and redemptions uh, and quality control and things like that. And they do a wonderful job. I think Panini's taken strides over the last year plus to get more bodies in there, to take more phone calls and to address more issues. And I think you're probably always going to have one-off situations arise because I think in so many businesses where humans are involved, you're going to have human error sometimes. And so I think uh, I think that can happen. I think also in a in a climate where redemptions nobody hates redemptions more than the manufacturers. I promise. And so when
Yeah,
you're
I want to stop. I want to stop you there, and I agree with that. I think people forget that you guys would rather have all those cards in possession and distribute them into the product and not have to worry about a redemption. But
absolutely
you know, I always tell people, Tracy, like, if you eliminated redemptions completely, you would, collectors would lose the opportunity to get certain athletes autographs in their packs, or at least redeemed. And so that's the trade-off. If you want to make it potentially, hey, you don't want redemptions, you're not going to have so and so's autograph be in that product. And I think that's a lose lose, not only for the collector but for the company, in this case Panini, because you want that, to someone to potentially pull that and get that card. And we got to put some of the onus too on these athletes and getting these back in a timely fashion. There's a lot of gears. I guess what I'm saying, there's a lot of gears at work. It's not one gear, it's a bunch of trying to work together. And so, believe me, I get the redemption frustration. I think we all do it, and but that's the trade off that sometimes comes up with it. I think some of the other complaints I hear too are like, "Hey, I waited so long, and then I got offered a kind of a substitute, but that wasn't. It didn't match. It doesn't match up that quality of athlete or that level of athlete to what I was offered." What do you say to that complaint?
I think the whole redemption system is imperfect. I think we can all agree with that. That it's no matter what company you're working with or you're trying to get redeemed through, it's an imperfect system for what was a clunky kind of unwieldy issue of not having the autographs back when the product packed out and shipped. And I think, but in my experience with the customer service folks that I know at Panini, they're very personable, and so I think if you they're willing to work with collectors more times than not in terms of just finding out who they collect, what teams they like, so that because they trust me, they want to please customers, they don't want to alienate them. If we were in the business of alienating customers, we wouldn't be around for long. And so I think there is potentially on the outside looking in a, mis, a misconception or misperception that they're just robots who don't care sometimes, and that's not it at all. I mean, I know Emily and Alex and Chase and those people in customer service. I know them pretty well, and I appreciate uh, their their professionalism and their willingness to learn what collectors want, so that if the card they want is not available and they're willing to trade out, who are their options? Here's some teams. So I think they sometimes will get a bad rap because it's one quick call. And I think another thing to understand too is they have so many people they're trying to please on a daily basis that sometimes things could get lost in the mix, or uh, an email doesn't get received. But I would just say they're human, and their willingness to work with customers is impressive as far as I've seen.
Okay, yeah, no doubt. And again, people are human. Mistakes will occur. The NIL has kind of changed the landscape, not of only of college sports, but the hobby as well. You guys just signed Trey Johnson, to a contract, high school, very revered high school basketball player. We've seen it change, like I said, not only the college landscape, but the hobby landscape. You know, talk about your thoughts on you've been in the hobby a long time, so this is something we haven't seen on this level. This is new for everybody. I don't care how long you've been in it. Talk about like navigating that, and do you like it? And do you think it's good?
Oh, those are some good questions, John. So navigating it can be unwieldy because it's so new for everyone, and it's kind of the wild west, right? In many cases when you're trying to reach some of these kids. But I think as a manufacturer, we need to be responsive and not just reactive but proactive in how we handle it, because it's here to stay, and we need to be a leader in the NIL space just as we are in the NBA and NFL space. And so I think you'll see us being pretty aggressive, as you just mentioned, Trey Johnson, but uh, a lot of other on the college front. Not just, I think Trey was our first high school kid that we signed, but college, the college NIL space is a game changer, and I think you'll see not just Panini, but all the other manufacturers kind of diving headfirst into the space too, and just trying to figure it out as we go because there's still so much uncertainty and so much newness around the NIL uh, machine. And so I think we're just learning it, but also being strategic and intelligent with how we participate. So you'll see us remain in that pool, swimming with everyone else.
Yeah, like you said, it's here to stay. So you have to kind of adapt and thrive and survive and that sort of thing. Speaking of that, the hobby landscape, I'm old enough to remember where, a week's worth of hobby news today would happen in a year back in the day. The hobby changes quick. The landscape is obviously changing. It's going to change for you guys here in the next couple years. How do how do you navigate that? Talk about like the process, the difficulties. Obviously Panini's going to try to stay around, and I hope they do. You don't want to see anybody not succeed. But talk about the landscape and navigating that as it's changing here.
Yeah, man, I can say that coming back to Panini, I missed a lot of the excitement around the this new future that's coming. And so diving back in, I can tell you that the attitudes here and the desire to create valuable, compelling products every time out is still very strong here. Um, I don't think I don't think any of us is looking too far down the road. I think we're looking at building every product the best that we can to make it to make sure that it lives up to what collectors expect for from those products. And I think, yeah, I think the future is bright. I think nobody's walking around here not excited. Everybody's excited. Everybody's comes in every day looking to win the day. And I think that was true 5 years ago, and it's just as true now. And so I think that can only lead to good things, but both in the short term and in the long term. And exactly what the landscape will look like then, who knows? But I think that our attitudes will be the same no matter what it looks like, and we're going to still be here doing what we do best, which is make trading cards for the people, man.
Going back, kind of backtracking slightly with the NIL. Do you think that's going to be a big part of that future as well?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I think NIL will be. I mean, it has to make sense, right? Like, I don't think we'll just dive into the NIL space just to be in it. I think it's still like everything else we do. It needs to make business sense for us to engage in those types of relationships. And I think we have a few big ones coming up that we're going to announce that I think people will see they make real sense. And I think there's a strong desire to keep finding those deals uh, across all sports. So I think it'll be a big part of what we do going forward.
This may air, Tracy, like the National might be in the books and done in Chicago. But your thoughts on the we're recording this before the National. Your thoughts on the coming National, back with Panini, kind of what we might expect to see at your guys' booth, and some of the things you've been to enough of them now. I'll call you a national expert. Um, and now coming back kind of to the Panini side, some things we should expect to see, and things you enjoy at the National.
Yeah, the National is one of my favorite weeks on the calendar every year, just because I first fell in love with the National, not because it was this massive trading card show where things you didn't even know existed showed up every year, every summer. That blew my mind going to my first National back in, what was it, Arlington, Texas, 80, 85, 86, I think. Um, but then going to my first one as a professional in the industry was 96. And um, I've been to probably all of them since. And my favorite thing to do is to talk to people, to collectors and uh, people I work with in the business, colleagues who I get to talk to on the phone all the time, but never get to see their face. I love talking to those people every year, and uh, so some I've known for 28 years, and some I just met last week or whatever. But I love hearing stories. I love to hear what Panini can do better, what I can do better, what you collect, how long you've been collecting, why you started collecting, like what collecting means to you. I've stood in booths from the Beckett booth to the Dahmer's booth to the Panini booth to the Roadshow booth and now the Panini booth again. And I'll stand there all day, and I just love talking to people and hearing their stories. And you really, it helps me every year to to hear the stories of why collecting is so important to people. And it's not just money. It's never just money. Like, yeah, the big money cards get all the attention in national headlines, and that's what Drake wants, and what Ken Golden wants, and what everybody promotes. But man, it's so much more than that. It's the dude who I sent a box to 10 years ago because he lost his job, and he sees me every year and he cries and he hugs me again because I sent him a box of, I think it was like black football or something. Those types of stories and uh, kids who collected with their dads and their moms and how they still collect even though mom and dad have passed and they still love it and do it in their honor of their parents and brothers and sisters and how it helped people get through tough times and that's what trading cards are to me and that's why I love the hobby so much and why I love being in the business because it's you do realize it's there's a lot of crappy stuff that goes on from redemptions to product delays to product cancellations to I didn't get the hits out of my box I wanted, but and that stuff matters. Don't get me wrong, but the thing that matters more to me is just the people side of the business and what it means to people, and that lifts me up every year. And I look forward to doing it again this year.
Yeah, well said, and great point. Right, we everyone wants their cars to be worth as much as they can, but that can't really be the only reason you do it. I think if it is, there's, in my opinion, it's maybe not the right way to go about it. But enjoy. They always say, collect with where if the value went to zero, you would still enjoy having
Yeah,
that item in your possession. I think that's the best way to collect and hearing those stories that like you said it makes what you do fulfilling and easier to go to work each and every day to get that stuff done. I know you're busy, Tracy. I appreciate you making some time for us and the listeners. As always, I give the guests kind of the final word. Give out any of the socials, where can people could whether it's find you or the company, anything you want to share with those out there to see what's going on.
well, if you want to find Panini America, it's pretty easy. Just Panini America on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that. If you want to find me, which I can't imagine why you would, but it's Tracy underscore Hackler on Instagram and Tracy Hackler on Twitter. And I I read, I listen, I conversate. So if you ever want to blow me up or you have a complaint or whatever, I listen. I always listen and I'll respond and yeah, hit me up anytime.
And I can attest to that. You've always responded. I've talked to you in person. I've talked to you online. Just be careful what you wish for there. Your inbox might blow up. But listen, a lot of knowledge with you, a lot of hobby experience, and you can't poo-poo that. And I always say I don't care how long you're in the hobby. I still learn every day. I know you are too. And the minute I stop learning, I know it's time to like hang up the cards and because I know that's never going to happen. So
Yeah, I agree,
uh,
man. I agree, and
yeah,
I appreciate you, John. Appreciate you having me on, and appreciate what you do for the hobby and for the people. And like it says, the hobby is the people. So you
yeah.
get that, and I really believe that strongly. And um, we'll join you anytime you need me.
Okay. Well, coming from, I appreciate that anytime I hear, but coming from you, even all the more so. So, continued success. I'll see you here in a few weeks, and at the same thing we both get circle on our calendars each and every year for probably very similar reasons. So,
Yes.
I'll see you soon.
Travel safely, brother. We'll talk to you soon, John.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.